A bell tolled over Windsor as candles guttered in a cold chapel. An infant wailed in a cradle wrapped with silk, his tiny fists bright as beads of light. In a chamber nearby, the Queen lay pale and still. The jubilation fell into whispers as the sound of prayer drifted down the corridor. They had their prince at last. England had waited for him for 28 years. It had cost a mother her life. The nurses crossed themselves. Courtiers checked their smiles. A tide of joy pressed against a tide of dread. In the center of that strange current lay the child who would be called Edward VI, the boy who would be written as tender and doomed. The truth moves in a darker current. The king who made him had a heavy appetite for power and for praise. The boy learned both before he learned mercy. He grew like a hawk bred in a mews of gold. His rule would be brief. It would be cruel in its intentions. It would drag the realm to the edge, then drop it into the hands of the next storm. The birth came on an autumn morning in 1537. Henry VIII strode through the palace like a man reborn. Tapestries shook as he laughed. Heralds cried the news in streets wet with rain. The people shouted themselves hoarse. A chronicler wrote that the boy was the fairest child eyes had ever seen. The king believed heaven had answered him at last. Then the Queen sickened. Jane Seymour had paid terribly for this triumph. Within days, she could scarcely lift her head. Within 2 weeks, she was dead. The cradle was draped in white. The bed where she had labored fell silent forever. Edward never knew the sound of her voice. He would have needed it. A father could not give what he did not value. He sent the boy away to a household of servants and tutors. It showed well in ceremony. It did not raise a gentler heart. The prince learned early that the king was a sun that burned whatever stood too near. Henry visited his son only in bursts. He spoiled him with things, then vanished back into the furnace of court. Edward's chambers began to mirror his father's. The walls carried the same colors. The beds wore the same hangings. Even the clothes matched. Little doublets cut to mimic the king. Little caps edged with jewels. It was a costume of power, and it fit too well. Lessons also wore finery, books bound in gold, sapphires sewn in covers. The boy took his meals with utensils that glittered like reliquaries. Gentle hands raised him, but they raised him to the wrong altar. He showed all the quick brightness that scholars love to find in princes. Latin came fast, scripture faster. The king had torn England away from Rome, and he needed a son shaped by that breach. Tutors drilled the boy in catechisms fitted to the new order. He listened. He did more than listen. He believed. The child who bowed his head in prayer began to speak of Rome as Babylon. He wrote sharp words for a small hand. He praised the new rites. He learned to hunt and to ride. He learned the clean lines of fencing and the staccato rhythm of the tilt yard. He learned the taste of command. He also learned to play with shadows. There were whispered tales of a red box where the prince kept small devices tied to magic and astrology. He and his sister Elizabeth wrote charms for amusement. Whispers spread that the children tried to read the stars and bend them. Yet many believe this is a myth rather than documented fact. What cannot be disputed is that both were bright, curious, and hungry for the hidden meanings of their world. The court fed them splendor and secrets. It fed them rivalry as well. Mary, the elder sister, was 2 decades older than the boy. At first he adored her. He told her he loved her most of all. She had lost a mother to illness and to a king's cold heart. He had lost a mother to fever and to a king's blind desire. For a time, their grief was a bridge. Then the bridge burned. The new religion demanded a division. Edward drifted to the sermons of reformers. Mary clung to the old mass. The boy began to see his sister as an error to correct. It would harden later into policy. War rattled the windows as he grew. Henry wanted Scotland yoked to England. A treaty promised it. A wedding would have tied the kingdoms. Edward would wed Mary, Queen of Scots. Faith and blood and the sword would at last point in the same direction. The Scots tore the promise apart. Henry's temper ripped in reply. He sent the boy's uncle north with bleak orders. Burn with fire and punish with steel. Leave such scars that their ruins will preach our revenge. The campaign was merciless. Farms smoked like altars to an angry god. The people of the border learned again what it means to lie between great powers. Edward watched the men he loved do terrible things and call it policy. When Henry died in January 1547, the realm held its breath. The king who left it had been a storm for nearly 4 decades. The boy who took the crown was 9 years old. A child sat on the throne, but men moved the throne where they wished. Edward Seymour, the boy's maternal uncle, reached for the lever first. Within days, he made himself Lord Protector. He wore a mild mask and a mailed hand. He spoke for the common good while he seized the goods of commons and crown. He pushed the new prayer book and tore down the old altars. He let the coinage be clipped thin as foil. He fought the French. He fought the Scots again. He could not fight the hunger that followed his choices. Sermons thundered across England while fields went quiet. Sheep ate men's livelihoods to feed the new estates. Riots flowered in the summer of 1549. In Devon and Cornwall, the prayer book rebellion rose for the old Latin Mass and for bread. In Norfolk, the tents of Kett's rebels spread across Mousehold Heath. They wanted justice against enclosure. They wanted lords who remembered mercy. The Protector sent soldiers and cannon. The king's name rode at their head. The fields learned the cost of asking. The rebels died in ditches. The corpses swung in market towns. The boy king kept a neat journal. He noted that executions had been made. His pen drew a thin line across a bleak page. A realm bled beyond the margin. Another Seymour watched all this and chose a faster road. Thomas Seymour, the Protector's younger brother, tried to charm the king in secret. He gave the boy coins. He whispered that others would make him a beggar. He courted Princess Elizabeth with reckless heat. Then he tried a darker courage. One winter night, guards caught him creeping near the king's chamber with a pistol. A dog barked. A shot silenced it. The guards seized him. The tower closed its stones around him. He died for treason on a March morning. The Protector did not weep. Family meant less than power. The boy watched another lesson written in iron. Power wears men down like a whetstone. The Protector grew arrogant and slow. Enemies gathered. John Dudley stepped forward with a smooth face and a colder patience. He watched the kingdom shake. He counted friends. He counted soldiers. He counted debts. In the autumn of 1549, he struck. The Protector fell. The tower door opened once for him too. He lost his head. Dudley became the new master, though he preferred softer titles. He called himself a servant of the crown. He became the hand that moved it. Dudley studied what war and piety had broken. He made a hard peace to stop the bleeding. He gave Boulogne back to France and took money instead. The realm called it shame. The treasury called it heir. He kept the Protestant course but checked the wildest fires. He courted foreign kings with promises. There were talks of a French marriage for Edward. There were talks of an imperial understanding through the king's cousins. Talks filled the winter. Harvests remained thin. The coin stayed light as a liar's oath. The poor still pulled down hedges when they thought no one watched. Edward had grown into a keen-faced teenager. He wrote with precision and devotion. He heard sermons that praised the godly prince who cleanses idols and cuts down superstition. He believed the words were about him. He believed God had picked him for a clean work. He approved new laws that bit deep into Catholic practice. Altars were broken, images were burned, priests married. Latin fell quiet in parish naves. England learned the sound of English prayers. Some hearts lifted, some broke. The boy king smiled when bishops told him that error had been beaten back again. He had the certitude of youth. He did not have time. In the spring of 1552, he fell ill. Measles burned along his skin. Smallpox followed. He survived. He did not recover his strength. A cough began to chew at him in the winter that followed. He wasted slowly in rooms heavy with perfume and damp with sweat. The physicians bled him. They prayed and argued. The court sensed the change and leaned toward the next fight. The boy knew it too. He wrote of his pains. He wrote of God. He wrote of the succession. He would not let Mary rule. He would not trust Elizabeth either. He had reasons, and he had a guide. Dudley offered a neat device. Bypass both sisters. Name Lady Jane Grey as heir. She was learned and devout. She was also Dudley's daughter-in-law. The king agreed. The lawyers frowned at the will of Henry VIII. The paper moved forward anyway. Scribes scratched. Seals were pressed. The boy who believed in a clean church believed in a clean line to the throne. In July 1553, he sat once at a window for his people. The crowd saw a shadow shaped like a king. His cheeks had fallen in. His eyes were too large. He looked like a candle burned to the cup. He died soon after. He was 15 years old. Rumors thickened like fog in an alley. Poison, some said. Dudley had overreached and silenced the boy to save himself. Others muttered that Catholic hands had crept close. Modern scholars view this as rumor, not evidence. The true record points toward a wasting disease. Tuberculosis fits the slow collapse, the sores, the cough that would not quit, the failure of the body while the mind stays sharp for cruel weeks. It fits the pattern of other young deaths in that century. It fits the silence of the physicians when the last prayers had been said. The paper that named Lady Jane Grey did not name reality. Mary wrote it down with the fact of her blood and the power of a people who wanted a clear air. She gathered men as she moved toward London. Councillors counted the crowds and changed their minds. Trumpets sounded for a queen. Jane left the throne after 9 days. She and her husband went to the Tower. Mary forgave until revolt touched her crown again. Then the axe fell. The streets ran with news and fear. Dudley followed them to execution. Mary took the scepter that Edward had refused to leave her. England moved into another season of fire. What did the boy leave behind? He left a prayer book that taught people to speak to God in their own tongue. He left bitterness in the shires that had lost sons to summer rebellions. He left coins that felt wrong in the hand. He left churches scraped clean to the stone. He left a habit of letting great men rule in his name. He left a map of how power moves when a crown is light and a council is hungry. He left a sister who would reverse his work and sign her rule in smoke. He left another sister who would turn the realm again and grind it into a new shape. His reign was a hinge. The door groaned each time someone pushed it. It never closed. He did not live long enough to become the gentle prince that softer stories want. He also did not live long enough to show the full reach of his convictions. We can only read the lines he had written by 15. The lines are clear. The boy was certain. The boy believed that error must be purged. The boy trusted men who praised him and held the reins for him. The boy learned to prize order above comfort. He learned to treat enemies as disease. It is a hard education. It makes a hard king. Perhaps England was spared by the same fate that took his mother. Perhaps the realm escaped a longer winter by enduring a brief one. There are darker tales told at the edges. Some say he once tore a hawk apart during a rage. Whispers spread that his temper could curdle in an instant. But historians agree this was only palace gossip. What cannot be disputed is that he noted deaths in his journal with a clerk's calm hand. Executions he wrote as if making inventory. He wrote speeches for Christmas. He asked after campaigns. He asked if idols had been destroyed. He prayed for light. He signed away 2 sisters and a century of precedent with a steady pen. That is enough to see the boy clearly. He was not weak. He was a blade forged too fast and swung by other hands. The story ends as a candle smokes after it gutters out. The rooms where he coughed fell quiet. The Tower kept its secrets. The chapel held another short funeral. The crown passed to the next storm. The policy of a decade turned on its heel. The people learned again that kings are not the same thing as kingdoms. The realm survived the boy and his certainties. It carried the scars into the next reign and the next. When we look back, we see the small figure seated on a high chair, his feet not touching the floor, his eyes bright and unblinking. We see the men who knelt and thought of themselves. We see a country learning to live with fire. The chronicles are clear, but the lessons are ours to find. If a prince can be raised like a weapon, what does that say about those who teach him to strike? Would England have been safer if Edward had grown to rule in full, or did fate spare the realm from a darker age?